We're still in 2.7 graphing techniques. We're doing reflections. So remember, reflections, it's like a reflection in a mirror. It's exactly the same, and we have symmetry. It's exactly the same. If we reflect it this way, it's exactly the same. Okay, so we have two different types of reflections here. So if I want to graph this function, the way that I remember what it looks like is it looks like this, which looks like the square root function. Okay, so it looks kind of the same. So in my head, that's how I remember what this looks like. So if I graph it, it looks like this. Okay, now if I want to reflect it across the x-axis, so here's the x-axis, I just go bloop. See, I'm reflecting it across the x-axis, and it's exactly the same. Or I can reflect it across the y-axis. So if I don't look at the green one, I take it and I go bloop. Okay, I'm reflecting across the y-axis. So I have two types of reflections. Okay, so if I put the negative in front of the function, it's a reflection across the x-axis. And if I put the negative inside the function, it's a reflection across the y-axis. Bloop, like that. Okay. So first, I'm just making a table of values, and well, if I want to go the square root of -9, I just want to show you something. Square root of -9. Your calculator says it's an error. Why is that? Because purple, that's this one, this graph only exists on the positive side of the graph, of the x-axis. There is no graph over here for the purple one, for this. So if I say, if x is -9, what's y? Well, this graph does not exist over here. So your calculator says there is no graph there, so it says it's an error. If I say -4, there is no graph over here. Don't look at the blue one, because the blue one is for this. But for the purple one, it doesn't exist. If I put -1, it doesn't exist here. If I put 0, the calculator says yes, yes, yes. The graph starts here. And so then when I start putting, okay, what is it when x is 1? Oh, y is 1. What if x is 4? Oh, y is 2. What if x is 9? Y is 3. Okay? So that's why your calculator gives you an error, because this graph does not exist over here. Okay, so now I graph it. Now let's do the green one. I put the negative in the front. So now I have negative root, let's put this in, -9. Well, I can't take the square root of a -9, so my calculator is going to give me an error. So I'm going to go negative square root of -9. Doesn't work. -4 won't work, -1 won't work because it's still a negative. So now if I change it to 0, square root of 0 is 0. Now I put in a 1. What's the negative square root of 1? -1. Now I'm going to put in a 4. -2. Now I'm going to put in a 9. There. So now if I graph this, all my y values have changed. Okay, they were positive. Now all my y values are negative. So here's positive y. Now all my y values have become negative. So -1, -2, -3. So they're all negative. So this has reflected it, or flipped it, across the x-axis. So now I'm going to do the same thing, but put a negative in the function. Okay? So now it's going to be the square root of negative and whatever x is. So if x is -9, let's do that. The square root of -9. What's a negative and a negative? Positive. Oh, so that's just the same as the square root of 9, which is 3. And then if I go and I put a 4 in, well, if it's a 4, negative and negative makes positive, so it's the same as 2. And if I put the 1 in, put the 0 in, okay, but now when I start and I put a positive number in, look, it's the square root of 1, -1, which I can't do. So my calculator says there's an error. Okay, so now if I want to graph it, all my x values have become negative. So here's my x, and these are all my negative x values. So when I graph it, it's over on this side. Okay, so that's the reflection. So now we're going to graph some. Okay. All right, so let's do this one first. Negative 3 squared. Remember, in your calculator, you have to put brackets around it if you're going to do this, or you'll get the wrong answer, because it's negative 3 times negative 3, which is positive 9. Negative 2 times negative 2 is 4. 0. 2 times 2 is 4. 3 times 3 is 9. Okay, so if I want to graph this, you have to remember that x squared is like a happy face. Okay, it's a parabola. Oops. A parabola. So if I graph this, negative 3, 9, and then negative 2, 4. There. So I sort of pretend I know what it looks like. There. So that is x squared. So now, it says just whatever x squared is, put a negative in front of it. So it's going to be negative. So 3 squared, negative 3 squared is 9. So it's negative 9. Oops. So it just means put a negative in front of it. So whatever this was, now it's going to be negative 4. 0. Well, you can't have negative 0. Negative 4. Negative 9. Let's check. Negative 2 times negative 2 is 4. So it really is negative 4. But the negative, oh, we don't need to have 2 lines. Okay. So we just put a negative in front of everything. So let's graph it. Negative 3, negative 9, negative 2. I'm taking these numbers and these numbers for my points. I'm going to cover that up because that's a different function. Okay, so now let's graph that. I'll use a different color. Let's use pink. So negative 3, negative 9. There's negative 3. There, so now, so you can see, here's my x-axis. It's reflected over the x-axis. Okay, so if I put a negative in front of my function, it reflects it across the x-axis. Now let's look at the next one. So when I see a square root, okay, I have to go, what does it look like? Well, a square root, when I graph it, it looks like this. It kind of looks the same as a square root. So in my head, I go, okay, it looks something like that. I don't know exactly what it looks like, but kind of. So let's put these numbers in. Two square root of negative 9. There's an error. Why is there an error? Ah, negative 9. I can't take the square root of negative 9, so that doesn't work. I can't, if I put a negative 4, that doesn't work because that's a square root of negative number. What about square root of 0? 0. So 2 times 0 is 0. Square root of 4 is 2, so 2 times 2 is 4. Square root of 9 is 3, so 2 times 3, 6. So let's graph this. So my points are 0, 0, 4, 4, and 9, 6. So 0, 0, 4, 4, and 9, 6. So here's my first one. Oh, it's so close. See, it kind of looked the same. Let's erase my guess. So that is 2 root x. Okay, so now we're going to say, what happens to this function when I replace x with negative x? Does it reflect over the x or does it reflect over the y? So let's cover this out. I'm going to put a 2 root negative, and wherever the x is, I'll put brackets. I'm going to put a negative 9 in there. Well, if I have negative, what's a negative and a negative mean when I multiply them? Positive. So that's the same thing as 2 root 9. So square root of 9 is 3. So 2 times 3, 6. So now I go, so negative times a negative is a positive. Square root of 4 is 2, so that's 2 times 2, which is 4. 0. 2 times 0, because the square root of 0 is 0, so that's going to be 0. 2 times, okay, so that's really 2 times the square root of negative 4. Let's use our calculator. What's going to happen? Error, because look, there's a negative, a root of a negative number. That doesn't work. Same for 9. If I go 2, that's the same thing as 2 root negative 9. I can't have a negative number under the root, so that doesn't work. So I have some points here, negative 9 and 6, and negative 4 and 4, and 0, 0. So let's graph it. I'll use pink. Negative 9, positive 6. Oops, I lost my negative. See, that should be negative 4, 4. So negative 4, 4, and 0, 0. So now it goes like that. So you can see, here's my y-axis. It reflected over the y-axis. Okay, so when you put a negative on the inside, it's reflecting across the y-axis, or you replace the x with negative x. Okay.